Today is July the 13th. What did Jesus say about racism? Let's find out together as we study John chapter 4. Today we begin the second meta command of Jesus, and we'll spend the rest of the week on this command. It's the command to share the gospel. Again, just as with the command to be saved, the words share the gospel don't occur in Jesus' mouth. It's our summary of several different, I believe 8 or 9 different commands that Jesus gives his disciples. The first 2 of these commands that we're going to look at occur after Jesus talks to the woman at the well in John chapter 4. Now, if you remember what happens, Jesus is walking from Judea back to Galilee. They pass through Samaritan territory near the village of Sychar. And while they're there, Jesus stops at Jacob's well, sits down, and the disciples say, "We'll go into town and buy some food." All 12 of them go together. Why the 12? One to carry the money, maybe one to carry the food back, and 10 bodyguards. They hated the Samaritans. They thought the Samaritans would beat them and steal from them if they could. So they decided to go in force. As they go, Jesus is at Jacob's well. A woman comes in the heat of the day, and you remember the conversation. You've probably heard many sermons about it. Jesus eventually brings her around to see that he is the Messiah. This is the first woman in John's gospel, the first person to recognize that Jesus is the Messiah. She runs back to the village, and as she runs away, the disciples come. They offer Jesus food. He says, "I'm not hungry." They say, "Well, you haven't eaten." He says, "I have food to eat that you don't know a thing about." And they're amazed. They can't understand what he's talking about. So in John chapter 4, we're going to start reading here in verse 34. They offer him food. He says, "I have food to eat that you don't know about." He says, "My nourishment comes from doing the will of God who sent me and from finishing his work." You know the saying, 4 months between planting and harvest. But I say, wake up and look around. The fields are already ripe for the harvest. The 2 commands that we have here, wake up and look around. Literally, Jesus says, open your eyes, first command, and look at the harvest, second command. Now he quotes a saying. We don't actually have a record of this saying anywhere else, and that causes a little bit of confusion. Jesus might be saying, there's a saying that you plant seed and 4 months later you get the harvest. But I tell you, the harvest is here. He also might be saying, as the text actually says, there are 4 months yet to the harvest. If that's what he's actually saying, the harvest in Israel comes in the month of April. That means that this would have been late December or early January. 4 months to the harvest. In late December and early January, what happens all over Palestine? You plant in October after what they call the early rain. The early rain comes, moistens the ground, and that allows you then to plant, and the seed germinates. Jesus looks around and he sees seeds that are germinating, whether it's wheat or barley or whatever. The plants are breaking through the ground and they're standing maybe that high. Jesus says to his disciples, "We're 4 months away from harvest, you think?" And then he says, "But I tell you, open your eyes, look at the harvest. It's already here. The fields are already ripe for harvests." Now, obviously, Jesus isn't talking about wheat or barley. What he's talking about are the Samaritans that the disciples just visited to buy food. They went to them, and what they saw were the hated Samaritans. There was an issue of racism. Jews hated the Samaritans. The Samaritans reciprocated. They hated the Jews. Both of them hated the Romans, and the Romans could barely tolerate either Jew or Samaritan. Jews were ruled by Herod, who was a Samaritan. That added to their racism. There was a lot of racism going on. Jesus says, open your eyes. Look at the harvest. The fields are ripe. What does Jesus say about racism? There is no place for racism in the kingdom of God. All are welcome at the foot of the cross. All are equal at the foot of the cross. Today, it's very easy for us to make friends and even to evangelize people who are like us. What about those who are different? What about those who are Samaritans to us? We need to cross whatever boundaries we have set up ourselves and reach out to everyone who is around us, regardless of race, regardless of social status, regardless of anything that might stand between us and them. Today, who are your Samaritans? Reach out to them today. Like, follow, and subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you used to listen to it. Email your questions to us at questions@becomehope.com. Tomorrow, we'll answer the question, do all religions lead to God?